My name's Dave Anderson. I'm a straight incorporated survivor from January 21st, 1978 into February of 1981. I'm here today with Jessica Gitman. Jessica, she's a survivor from Cascade. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Come up and talk to me. What's your sign say there?
So it says the Cascade School from May 1993 until June 1995. And then I'm going to move it for a second so I can read. You can see, but I can tell you what I got from the Cascade School over those 26 months. It
Okay.
gave me the fear to speak any truths, post-traumatic stress disorder, nightmares, fear of sleep, low self-esteem, body dysmorphia, trust issues, the statement, I will never be good enough, guilt and shame, depression and anxiety, fear of telling the truth without severe punishment, anger and rage at my family and the adults and staff that abused me, threatened me, and taught me that I cannot trust anybody.
Wow. So you were there for right at 26 months.
Yes.
How did you end up at Cascade, Jessica?
So just a quick background.
Sure.
I come from two very nice Jewish parents that met at a Jewish singles dance at the age of 24 and lost their virginity to each other after marriage and have been married 50 years this year. I have an older brother who has never done drugs or anything bad. And I guess from birth, I was sort of predestined for issues. I was born very pigeon-toed, and at the age of 6, I had to be in a wheelchair for a year with bars in between my legs, Velcro underwear, and then had to learn how to walk again. So from ages 6 to 8, I was in a wheelchair basically, and I was very bullied and made fun of and left out and felt very different from the day of I first remember of my life. I felt like I was adopted or something.
What happened as you got older? So how old were you in 1993 when you went in?
So I was in the 8th grade, I was 14. So what happened was, I tried to fit in with kids for many years and I just got made fun of a lot and just never felt like I fit in. So in the 8th grade, I realized that if I started scaring people, that they would accept me. So what I did is I started wearing all black. I had a mohawk. I wore wallet chains, very big clothing. And that was so people would stop making fun of me and be nice to me. And it worked. It worked very well with the students at school. I made lots of friends, but it didn't work well at home at all. My parents would spend a lot of money at Nordstrom and buy me, flowered clothes, pink, very nice stuff. And I would take it back, get the cash and go get, Metallica t-shirts and, wallet chains and things like that. And they were very, very unhappy. I was making them look bad in the community of La Jolla, California. And I started getting in trouble for the way I looked and the people that I hung out with. My parents thought I was doing drugs and having sex, and I wasn't. I just was expressing myself.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened?
You sound like a teenager at the time. I mean, I don't. Yeah. Why were you sent to Cascade?
Yeah. So the only thing that I did wrong was I tried sniffing rubber cement once. Now, all of my friends were having sex, smoking marijuana. And one time my friend put some rubber cement in a bag and showed me how to do it. And I tried it and it was pretty cool. And I put the stuff in my drawer And a few days later, my mom came to me and said, I found this rubber cement. I know that you're huffing it and doing drugs. If I ever find it again, you're going to be in severe trouble. And about a week later, she found it in my drawer again because I had done it again. And she told me this was the Thursday and May 1st, no, May 2nd, no, May 1st, Thursday, May 1st, 1993. She told me that if they ever caught me, that I would be in severe trouble. So on May 1st, they found rubber cement in my drawer again. And they told me I would be grounded for a week. So the next day was Friday, and there was a concert I wanted to go to with my friends. So I decided as a 14-year-old in 8th grade that it would make sense to go to run away on Friday and come back Sunday night. And then the next weekend I would be grounded so I could go to the concert. You know, I mean, it makes complete sense. You know, I'm going to get punished just a week later.
Sure.
So that Friday, I packed my backpack for the weekend, had my mom drop me off at school, and left with a couple friends and went to some guy's house downtown, and we were going to the concert the next night. I called my parents to let them know I was safe and I was going to the concert and I'd be back Sunday night, and then they could punish me. And they, you know, told me they loved me, and I hung up on them. And my friends started making fun of me because I called my mommy and daddy, and I started crying because I was very attached to my parents, and called them back and agreed to tell them where I was and have them pick me up on this Friday
Right.
night. So I had only been gone from when they
Right.
dropped me off to Friday at about midnight. And I told them because my friends were making
Right.
fun of me because I wanted mommy and daddy. My parents promised no punishment. So they came and picked me up. I fell asleep in the car and I woke up at a mental hospital at 2 a.m. When I got to the mental hospital, they were looking
Wow.
for bruises from abuse, from drugs, asking me if I had, you know, eating problems, and I didn't know what they were talking about. I had never done anything. And so for 9
Wow.
days, I lived at the mental hospital, and I didn't eat for most of those days because I don't know if you've ever heard about crazy people becoming crazy, or not crazy people becoming crazy in crazy places. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, everyone had drug and all these problems, and I had no problems except I like to dress weird. So, so I didn't eat for a few days while I was there to fit in. Then I went for 3 weeks to the day program at the mental hospital, and I was doing so good. My parents said we were going on a vacation. So I was very excited about this vacation, but I thought it was strange that my brother wasn't going and that we were going to San Francisco to go shopping, just out of nowhere. So my parents and I started a long drive, and I didn't know where I was. And we appeared at some hotel room. And the next day we were going shopping in San Francisco, and they told me on the way we could stop at this special school that was beautiful. And if I liked it, I could go in August. And this was May, but I didn't have to go. They just wanted to show me the scenery on the way to shopping. So that night was the first night I ever prayed in my life. I've never believed
Right.
in God. I sat on the floor in that hotel bathroom in front of that toilet, and I prayed. I said, there's something wrong. I don't know what. Let me get back to La Jolla by Monday, please. I don't know what's going on, but I'm so scared. If there is a God, don't let anything bad happen. And I cried in that bathroom. Next morning, we got in the car. We drove about 60 miles on one road in the middle of nowhere with no buildings, nothing. Went over a cattle guard. There was a big rock that said the Cascade School, and we parked. And we got out, and my parents said, you know, if you like it, like we said, you could go in a couple months. You're just going to take a tour with a student, and we're going to, you know, talk to the staff. And so that was May 25th. Like I said, I ran away May 2nd. So May 25th, 1993 in 8th grade. And I, you know, I appeared at Cascade, and I knew they wouldn't leave me And this girl gave me a tour and walked me around the school. And it was very beautiful, but very wildernessy. And she took me into a place called the Lodge where all the students hung out, and they all were laying on top of each other. Males laying on top of males, females laying on top of females with their heads on each other's stomachs. And they said that was called smushing, and that it was normal. And, you know, you didn't do it with the opposite sex unless it was a counselor, but that was, you know, just normal. And I said, no, I think these people are gay and I think I'm in the wrong place. You don't snuggle with people your age. This is really weird. But I was just so grateful I wasn't going to go. You know, I was kind of laughing at it all. And then they told me, you know, I'd be there 2 to 3 years. There would be no makeup, no jewelry. They were going to shave my head down to the skin because I had a mohawk. And I just kept telling the girl my parents would never do that to me. You know, I knew they wouldn't do it. So after the tour, we went back to where my parents were. And when the door opened, my parents were both crying and my heart dropped. And they could barely even speak. And all I remember is saying, fuck you, bitch. I never want to see you again, slamming the door. And I didn't see them for about 6 months.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of
So,
like a
first day.
abandonment. You were just dropped off.
Yep. I was just dropped off. I guess a lot of people get escorted and they were going to do that, but they tricked me.
Well, once you, I mean, I know the feeling because I mean, it's like ice water just runs through your bowels. I get it. But once that faded, I began to see where I was at, and I noticed that it was what it was. And what were some of your first impressions of Cascade after, or while you were still feeling that icy abandonment?
Yeah, I felt completely abandoned. I felt completely betrayed. The only people, you know, that have ever been there for my whole life that I trusted just threw me off somewhere in the middle of nowhere when all I needed was like a hug and a little bit of attention. And instead, they signed over their parental rights to a bunch of strangers in the middle of nowhere and paid $150,000 a year for over 2 years to fix me when there was nothing wrong.
Right. I mean, you said the place was nice, right? I mean,
so it was very pretty.
I don't know. What do you mean by nice?
The buildings were, you know, beautiful and brand new. The scenery was beautiful. You know, the people looked very normal. To me, it was, you know, a preppy J. Crew kind of look because we actually could only wear certain clothing from certain catalogs. J. Crew, REI, and Eddie Bauer, I believe it was, and JCPenney. But when I said goodbye to my parents the way I did, you know, my first impressions were not good because the next thing they did was took me and strip searched me. They took me and they made me take all my clothes off in front of 3 females, one being staff. Like in jail, they had me cough, they had me, you know, spread stuff. And they searched everything I owned and they took everything. They took all my pictures, they took all my clothing, all of my makeup, all of my music, you know, and told me because I had a mohawk, I would be the only person there with no hair, that they would have to shave it all the way down to a 0 where the rest of it was. So, you know, I mean, I had no makeup, no jewelry, no identity, no hair.
Did they explain any of this to you? I mean, or the rationale behind it?
Yeah, the rationale was that they wanted, they didn't want anyone to get into groups and cliques and bully people. So they wanted everyone to be the same. So there was only certain music we could listen to. If you said the name of a band, it was called Popping Off, and you would get in trouble and have to wash dishes for days. If you sang a song or anything. So yeah, certain music, certain clothing, and the purpose was to have us all be the same. So, you know, no one was cooler than the other, and the gangsters didn't hang out with the gangsters, and the punk rockers didn't hang out with the punk rockers. But the truth is, what they did
Right,
is they took our identities. They took our
right.
identities and stripped us of them. So we had nothing except what was inside.
Okay. Now,
So,
I mean, the military does that, right? You know, I was in the submarine corps, and when I went through boot camp, that's what happens. They strip you down, they take away your identity, and they gradually build you up as a team. And then the individual is thought of later. And if something happens constructively, I get the impression that that really wasn't your experience there.
no, it was, no, what they did to me, I felt, was what they were doing is they were trying to make us all the same so we would follow the rules and be in their little cult that they were. Cascade comes from a cult called Synanon. And Synanon started a school called CEDU, and CEDU is very similar to Cascade, and was open before Cascade. And actually, what happened is some people who went to CEDU became counselors there, and they were counselors there for a while. And I guess, you know, since they were former students and they were quote unquote bad kids, they were a little rebellious, even though we're now staff. And what they did is one night they put sugar in the gas tanks of every single other CEDU staff member and ran about 6 or 7 different people. I won't say their names, but the people who started the Cascade School. They ran that night after they put the sugar in the gas tanks, which makes it so your car won't run. And
Right.
they went to where the headmaster of Cascade lived. He borrowed $2 million from his parents, bought the Cascade property, and took 15 students from CEDU and 6 or 7 staff members, and within 2 weeks started the Cascade School. These counselors that were former CEDU graduates. And on top of that, for the first 4 years of the Cascade School, which started in 1984, there was the only people who had degrees had one in history and one in fine arts. So there was nobody doing any therapy who had a license. All they had was experience from CEDU and a cult. And so, you know, what basically happened to me at Cascade is I was brainwashed and, you know, became part of the cult, I guess you would say. Now that I know about it, I didn't know when I was there what was going on. And, you know, became part of the cult. I don't know if I answered your question right or just went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask you this, Jessica. I know a little bit about cults, and I know. I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah. You did. What I'm curious about is like other cults. They tend to keep their people very busy. What was your average day like? Your average evening like?
So we would wake up very early, make our beds. We had 10 minutes. We were allowed to take showers. And then I guess we would go to breakfast. And then we had classes. It was a college prep school, supposedly. So we had class during the day. But on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we had something called forums, which I guess they also called raps. And those were for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it was a very horrible group therapy intensive kind of session. People would, what is called, be indicted. And basically there was a counselor and maybe one or two counselors and about 20 students, and every student had to go to these Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and they were supposed to be 3 hours long. And you would make a request about somebody that you wanted to indict, somebody who was saying Metallica, or somebody who took a shower for more than 10 minutes. And you would put it in this box, and then they would set up the forums. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I remember shaking all morning, so scared about who was going to indict me and for what. And we would get in these rooms and get in a circle, and all of a sudden someone would start yelling someone would stand up and walk in front of someone and switch chairs with them, because you could not sit next to the person you were going to indict. So they would get across the room, sit down in a circle, and start yelling at you. And it was not nice. So let's say it was because I said Metallica. They would say, a student would get across from me and say, Jessica, how could you say Metallica? You've been here for 6 months, and there are new students. How could you do that? That is so wrong. And then they would say you were dirty if you did not pop out, meaning tell the truth about everything. You were dirty. So, you're dirty and you've been here 6 months and you're a horrible example. And then the next person would walk and switch chairs with someone across from you and start yelling at you next. And you're always dirty, you're always doing things wrong, and blah 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 blah. And then dirty, how does it feel to be a liar? How does it feel to be the piece of shit you were when you came in here? Your parents didn't even want you. They paid someone to drop you off and get rid of you. And they would just, person after person would come and yell at you, and you weren't allowed to use Kleenex or say a word. You just would sit there and get yelled at, and then they would have you yell at the floor and say things to the floor, like Mom, why did you send me to this school? How could you abandon me? I hate you. And then the counselors would put it back on you and be like, well, what did you do? You were a slut, and you were you sniffed rubber cement and you deserved it. Why don't you tell your parents what a bad person you are? And until we would do it, they would make us sit for 8 hours, 9 hours at a time. And I would have to yell at the floor and yell at my parents for things that I didn't even feel, half the time that were even a problem. So that was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then Sundays, we had a special dress up dinner night where we were supposed to wear white dresses, which was kind of creepy. And then, so that was just, I guess, a normal day. And then at night, the last 30 minutes, there was something called Last Lights. And some people would do like performances or read a poem or play a song, and then everyone would go to sleep. But the whole school was run by the students. Like the students were the ones who chopped the wood. The students were the ones who washed the dishes and cleaned the kitchen. The students were the ones who did everything. It was forced labor, is what I feel. My parents paid them to have me do work So they didn't have to have a gardener and a dishwasher and this and that. And the more trouble you got in, the more things you had to do. I mean, we had axes, we had to cut down trees.
Hmm.
I'm sorry if I'm a little
How
all
many
over the
people
place,
were
but
there,
there's just so
Jessica?
much.
Jessica, how many people were there?
About 150 to 200 at a time.
Oh, wow. What were the age groups? Age range?
The youngest person was 13, and I knew someone who stayed there till they were 19, which was surprising. Usually, most people were 16 to 18, and when they left, you know, Cascade would help them and they would go to college straight after. You know, I had to go to 11th and 12th grade, which is a whole nother story. But most of the kids were about 16 or 17.
Okay. Because I was thinking, you said earlier your parents paid 150,000 a year, right?
Something like that. Yep.
So you take
It was like $7,000 a month.
150,000 and you multiply
Say that
that,
again.
let's lowball it, say 100. That's a lot of money for you to be chopping wood and washing dishes. What I
Yeah.
said was is $150,000 times 100 people. That's a lot of money to have you chopping wood and washing dishes.
And on top of that, to have people who were counselors and
And
stuff
there's
who
only
didn't
two
even have,
staff members, three staff members, and it's basically run like a.
on top of that, to have people who were counselors and stuff who didn't even have.
Right, right. And the only other staff were people that worked there, is that correct?
So
Or
there
that
were
had
staff in
gone
the
through
admin.
Cascade?
Say that again. What?
Staff in the admin.
Okay.
So there was the admin, there were teachers, and then there were people they called counselors, but these counselors had no training. I guess the way that I was told they were trained is they sat in a couple of forums and then they ran their own. So doing deep emotional work with people where they're talking about being molested and yelling at the floor and stuff like that, and these people didn't even have an associate degree or maybe not even a GED, is mind baffling to me. And what did they tell our parents? I'm not exactly sure. I know, you know, they thought that there were psychiatrists and
Yeah.
psychologists and, you know, all these people who were trained correctly. And that was not the case. There was a psychiatrist there who I never saw, and I was on meds, and I can't find out what they are because there are no records left. But they were giving almost everyone a cocktail of meds. And I was told from a former counselor that every week, or no, once a month, they would have a meeting with the psychiatrist and they would make up fake diagnoses for each student in order to tell the parents, to make sure the parents kept them there and paid the money and didn't, you know, listen to the kid if the kid said, oh, this place is bad and I want to come home and whatever. It was impossible actually, because twice a week we would speak to our parents on the phone for 10 minutes, calling them.
Oh, this place is bad. I want to come home.
150 grand a year, and we called our parents on speaker for 10 minutes with a counselor listening. So if I said something like, you know, I didn't see a psychiatrist and they say I'm schizophrenic or something, I couldn't tell my parents that. The counselor would either hang up or say, who do you believe, us or the bad kid? So, you know, we couldn't, there were lots of things that happened, you know, some which I will probably discuss, but we couldn't tell our parents anything. I didn't even know that O.J. Simpson, Kurt Cobain, I knew nothing until I got out of Cascade. I didn't know any news. They wouldn't allow us to know about current events. It was like the whole world stopped.
any news, know about current events. It was
Right. Right. Do, you were there for 26
I know
months with
there's
all
a
of
lot.
these things happening.
I know there's a lot.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm curious, you know, on your best day, if you could give Cascade just a little leeway, what would, if you walked away with anything, can you think of anything you walked away with?
Positive,
Positive?
because
Yeah.
negative, I walked away with some stuff that'll never go away, like on the poster. Like I still
Right.
have my hangers 2 fingers apart. I still, won't take showers for more than 10 minutes. I still feel guilty about almost everything and tell on myself for no reason. But the positive things I gained from Cascade was strength. I'm a warrior. I have been to hell and back
You're a
at least 5
survivor.
times.
Absolutely.
I am a survivor. Yes, that's what I got. It was very painful and it still is, but I am strong and I'm alive and I'm
Let
sitting
me
here
ask
and
you
I'm telling the truth.
this, if I can.
What I got. It was very painful and it still is. But I am strong and I'm alive and I'm sitting here and I'm telling the truth.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I want to really tell you how much I appreciate it, because I was thinking when you were talking about, sitting in the indictments, I know how terrifying that is. We didn't call it indictments, but we had that 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, wow.
And the big fear that you were talking about, experiencing at 9 o'clock in the morning on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that fear, I know what it's like. We felt it all the time, and you could see that 13, 14-year-old getting verbally stripped and humiliated. Better him than me, better her than me.
Mhm.
When it got down to it a couple of times, it turned out that I had to be the one, belittling somebody else. I had to be screaming at somebody else. I had to be physical with somebody else, and that made the mind fuck doubly worse for me. Did you experience that as well?
Not physical, but yes. I mean, I ran away 3 times from Cascade. I got about 40 miles. One of the times got to the phone. I tried to get out. Wait, can you ask me that question again? I'm sorry.
Can you ask me that question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. What my question is when I was locked up, I was abused, certainly. But the abuse was really exquisite because I had to abuse other people to succeed in the program. And what I'm
Okay,
wondering is,
I
did you have
remember
to abuse others in order to get anywhere?
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Eventually,
Yeah.
after about a year,
Yes, eventually.
their brainwashing or memory implantation or whatever they were doing, sleep deprivation, all the different techniques worked. And I would go into forums and I would put names in the box and I would indict people. I mean, I couldn't believe that somebody would say the word Metallica or talk about someone they knew in San Diego, because that's called cutting up. You're not allowed to talk about anyone you knew outside of the school. I, would see people, who were on something called bans. When you were on bans, you were not allowed to look at or speak to whoever you were on bans with. And sometimes it was the whole school. All you could say is hi, bye, pass the salt, pass the pepper. And, so I would get people, see people looking at each other who were on bans, and I would go tell on them. And the reason I would tell on them is because if I didn't, and I would be the one doing dishes and getting indicted in the forum. So it was sort of to protect myself, it became.
Of course.
Like I would
Of
tell
course.
on others so
That's what
they
it was
wouldn't
like for
tell
me
on
too.
me. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
get it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was like, snitches get stitches, but opposite, there we were taught that if we did not tell, that we would get in more trouble. And half the time the things weren't even that important and were so minuscule, but we had to make the biggest deal out of it because, just anything 1 minute over on the phone. I mean, you are the worst person on the earth. You are dirty. You need to, be ripped apart. I mean, and I went along with it after a while. At the beginning, I never thought I would have laid and done the smush piles or kept secrets about the workshops or anything. But the second year I fell for it completely. I was right there with them. I was, indicting people. I was, running the dishes crews. I was almost like a goody two shoes, but it was out of fear, and it was out of the hope that it would get me out quicker. So it was fake. I learned what game to play. Are you there?
Somebody confronting people.
What? Hello.
Okay, hang on.
Okay.
How about now? Okay. Did you ever find yourself into a situation where you were forced to confess anything?
The 3 times I ran away, when we came back, we were forced to sit in a room and write, our cop out list, which is the confessions, everything you did wrong, from peeing in the shower to smoking cigarettes to whatever it may be. But we actually had to do that, I believe, once a week. We had to write those lists anyway. But there were times when, yes, I was forced to, sit there and write stuff, and I couldn't even think of stuff. I would actually end up having to write lies because I didn't have anything to write, because I was so scared I wouldn't do any of the things that weren't allowed anymore. Like my list would end up being like, I thought
So,
that I wanted to say a pop off and almost did.
so in a sense, I mean,
I mean, I
Just-
what?
strike about betrayal.
I can't hear you. Hello?
By creating false